So in the previous lesson, we obviously looked at the three types of structure. And essentially this is sort of, I guess, our ultimate goal of what we're working towards. When you guys are gonna have a great understanding of each of these three pieces and ultimately how we eventually put them all together to give us a very solid but deep understanding of price action with that mechanical framework in place. Now, I appreciate, going through that lesson for the first time, whether you're sort of new to the style or especially new to trading in general, it can be quite overwhelming, especially when we haven't actually looked at, like proper price action examples in depth. But like I said before, I think it's just good to at least give you some exposure to what we're sort of working towards. So you can kind of piece together in the back of your mind, right, what it is we're actually trying to do here. But what we're going to do over the course of the next few lessons is we're going to break down each of these three types of structure sort of into their own, individual pieces. So we can really master them on their own, each individual concept, get very, very familiar with the rules that we use, the mechanical rules that we use to draw and identify them, right? We're going to do this on price action examples. We're going to do loads of walkthroughs. We're going to absolutely nail them on their own. So then eventually towards the end of the module, right, we'll practice putting them together, because that's when, it makes sense of, okay, we have this information. We know how to map each individual piece of structure, but how do we actually interpret them, right, to make trading decisions, right? How can we actually use this to make money in the market, right? That's the whole goal. So for now, just kind of work with me through the next few lessons where we're literally just going to be learning them the rules, how to draw, how to identify them, almost like as much of a robot as possible. And as we get through the lessons, then you're going to start to see how the pieces of the puzzle all fit together for us to, read the market, in that really clear way. So without further ado, obviously by the title of this video, we are going to be concentrating on fractal structure. Okay. So over here, this is basically what becomes under what we're going to be looking at. So fractal structure and CHoCH, we'll get onto CHoCH in a minute, but essentially it's where we're looking at these tiny, tiny movements in price, which we'll see in a second, where it's literally sometimes one or two candles. Sometimes it's, a few more candles than that, but you'll see, it's basically very, very small movements in price that we refer to as fractal structure. Now, when you look at that fractal structure, you almost get that tiny, tiny pause in price action, and then price breaks that low. That's what we then call that change of character, right? And essentially, it's the fractal structure changing trend, which again, we'll get into in depth in a minute. But I just kind of wanted to refresh your memory as to what part of the overall bigger puzzle fractal structure plays a role in. So remember, fractal structure, when we get that change of character, when the fractal structure changes trend, that just signals to us we're getting that internal pullback, right? So this is the internal structure, and we're trading between that internal high and that internal low. When we get that initial change of character here, that just signals the start and end of those internal pullbacks. Likewise over here, right, when we get that internal move to the downside and then we get that change of character, it's just to signal the start and end of the internal pullback of this range, okay? So just a quick memory there. But now let's kind of take a look at what rules we use, how we actually identify it on candlesticks, and all that fun jazz. So first things first, let's try and keep it simple and just kind of separate out both bullish and bearish markets when purely thinking about fractal structure on one time frame alone. Okay, so if we look at the bullish scenario here, right? So the fractal structure is bullish. Sort of the first thing you need to be thinking about when looking at fractal structure is looking at the candle highs in a bullish fractal market. Right? So the way that we define if price is moving to the upside and continuing to move to the upside, again, when purely thinking about fractal structure, is we want to be looking at, does each candle continue to break the previous candle's high? Okay, so if you start with, say, candle number one, right, and you look at the next candle, does the next candle break this candle's high? Yes, it does, right? So that's the continuation of the fractal move. And again, does the next candle break this candle's high? Yes, so that's the continuation of the fractal move. Okay, we get to this candle here. Does the next candle break this candle's high? No. Hopefully we can see, right? This high here fails to break this candle's high here. So what that means is we have now had what we call a fractal pullback, okay? Because this candle here has failed to break the previous candle's high. So for the way that we look at fractal structure, that's literally it in a bullish market. We look at, does the candles continue to break each candle's high? Yes. So this is all part of that fractal up move. But when the next candle fails to break the previous candle's high, obviously this candle fails to break its high, we now have that fractal pullback, okay? So that's literally in a bullish market. How we then define and we look for where that fractal high is we can draw it out and we can draw the line across when we want to define the current active fractal high. We have to wait for the first candle to fail to break its high, because that then essentially means we get a fractal pullback, okay? Now, there's a reason why all of these candles here, you can see across this whole screen, they're all the same color. And I've deliberately done that because the way that we look at fractal structure, the color of the candle is completely irrelevant. So whether it's a bullish candle or whether it's a bearish candle, right, an up or down candle, it's irrelevant for how we view structure, okay? And you'll see why as we get onto the charts. And what you really need to be training your brain to think about. It can be a bit tricky at first, but literally just looking at, in the bullish scenario, obviously we'll get into the bearish scenario in a minute, but in the bullish scenario, you want to be looking at, if price is moving to the upside, does it continue to keep breaking the candle's highs? Okay, yes, we're moving to the upside. The moment this candle fails to break that previous candle's high, we're pulling back, okay? I know it seems simple and you're probably thinking, get on with it, but we have to take it slowly because there will be scenarios in price action where, very frequently people get caught up and get a bit lost when they're first trying to get their head around this concept, okay? Now, a reason why that's key, and it seems pretty simple in this case, is what can very often happen in the market is you can get, say, a wick that's down here, right? And you'll be looking at imagine you can only see these three candles here, right? And you're going, okay, I see price move up, I see price move up, and then we've come down and we've broken that low there. So now you may think, right, that we've had essentially that change of character and the fractal structure shift bearish because it's broken that low. But remember, what is the rule for defining an up move with fractal structure in a bullish market? It's nothing to do with where these lows are, remember? It's all about looking at, does the next candle break this candle's high? Yes. So it doesn't matter if this wick comes down here, it's irrelevant. It doesn't matter because this candle broke the candle's high. So it's part of the up move, okay? Likewise, next candle here, it breaks this candle's high, right? So it continues that upwards movement. It doesn't matter what the low does. It doesn't matter that it breaks this low, right? In this instance, because price has continued to break these highs. Only once we get this pullback here, where this candle fails to break this previous candle's high, that's then when that fractal pullback has started, and then we can mark out and draw across that this is the current active fractal high, right? And the low would be somewhere down here, but I haven't got it drawn on in this case, okay? And that's how we do it. Okay, so a fractal high in the bullish market, in a fractal bullish market, the fractal high, i.e. this high here, it's confirmed when the following candle fails to break its high. So that's when we get the fractal pullback, and that's where we get it here, okay? I think you guys get it, right? So then when we continue to the upside, right, and we break this high, we break the fractal high, that is your fractal continuation, right? You may want to call it, a fractal break of structure, an FBOS maybe. I don't refer it to that or label it as that, but that may be something you want to call it, right? But essentially you're just looking at the continuation of that move, right? So then what happens after we get the break? We continue the up movement. How do we know that? Well, the next candle breaks its high, the next candle breaks its high, the next candle breaks its high. Does the next candle break this high? No. So now we have the fractal pullback, right? So then we can mark on the new high and we can draw our fractal, our active fractal high line across, right? So now at this moment, right, imagine you can't see these candles and we're only at this candle here in the market that's printed. At this moment, we can go, right, this is our fractal high. And then we look back and go, where was the last low, right? This was the fractal low. So now the fractal structure, the fractal range is between this high, where the orange line is, and this low, okay? So now the whole time that price action is moving between these two lines, right? It can do literally, whatever it wants. It can break highs, break lows, whatever. As long as it hasn't broken that fractal high, the active high, and the active fractal low, essentially this price action, at least for now, right, is completely irrelevant to what we're caring about with defining the fractal structure, okay? Until either this high breaks or this low breaks, everything in between, we essentially don't pay attention to. It doesn't mean anything, okay? We wait for either the low to go or the high to go, right? So obviously, as we can see here, the high eventually breaks. Now, with fractal structure, all we need to see is a wick break, okay? So for basically everything else that we use, we want to see a candle body close, but we'll get into this in the other lessons with swing structure and internal structure. We want to see price actually close above the high or low. But with fractal structure, and this is a key point, fractal structure is the most aggressive type of structure break that we use in our trading. Just always think about, when you're thinking about fractal structure, the first word you want to be thinking about is aggressive, okay? And you'll see, again, while we use it in the lessons, later in the lessons, why we're going to be using it in our trading. But you're learning this now, just appreciate that this is the most aggressive way in which we're ever going to look at structure. So that's why we want, or we're happy to see a break occur when it's literally just a wick break, okay? The moment when you have your line drawn across like this on the active high, the moment in the market that price trades 0.1 pips, so a micro pip above that high, that is your break. That is a break of the high, right? That is your fractal continuation. The moment that price trades 0.1 pips higher than the high, the break has occurred, okay? So obviously, the candle could close, fine. They're both continuations, but at the moment that price trades higher, that is your fractal continuation, okay? Hopefully that makes sense, right? So like we said, we had the bullish fractal structure. All of these candles broke the prior candle's high. Then the next candle failed to break its high. So then we know we've had to start the fractal pullback and we can draw our high line across. And we know at this point we're trading between this high and this low. Easy peasy, right? We wait for either the low or the high to break. The high then breaks at this moment, okay? So we've had a fractal continuation. So when we get that continuation, obviously we know there must be a new active fractal low, right? Because it's not going to stay down here. We need to adjust it to where the new low is, okay? Now, with fractal structure, when we want to find where the new lower high is, we always take the nearest one to where we had the break. We always then want to find where the nearest one is, because remember, with fractal structure, we want to be very, very aggressive. That's the whole point of what we're trying to do here, okay? So that's why we want to take, when we get the break, we want to find where is the nearest low, okay? So as you'll see with swing structure, we always want to take the lowest low, but with fractal structure, we always want to find the nearest low, okay? So we'll get onto bearish in a minute, but the way we do it in a bullish market is the moment the fractal high breaks and we have that bullish continuation of the fractal structure, and we want to find where is our nearest fractal low. The way we do that is we look for the nearest candle that failed to break the previous candle's high. Okay, so it sounds like a bit of a mouthful and you have to think about it a bit, but when you practice this, it will be second nature and you'll be able to spot it instantly, I promise you. But again, when we want to find the nearest low when that high breaks, what we look for is the nearest candle that failed to break its previous candle's high. Okay, so if we look at this candle, did this candle break the previous candle's high? Well, we can see here, yeah, it broke that previous candle's high. So essentially what we're trying to do here is we can see that this is still like one movement up, right? So this is not going to be a low because that's part of the up move. And that's why we're looking for where was the nearest candle that failed to break the previous candle's high? Well, this candle broke the previous candle's high. So that's part of an up move, right? So this is not going to be a low that we care about. Did this candle here, did it fail to break the previous candle's high? Yes, it didn't break the previous candle's highs, did it, right? So that now becomes our low, right? Because it failed to break the previous candle's high. Now, the reason why we care about this as a low is because you have to think about what happened with price here. Because it failed to break this previous candle's high, that means we had a fractal pullback here, right? So then from then onwards, all of the candles broke the previous candle's high. That's then an up move. So as you can see, right, we had a down movement and then we had an up movement. So that's why when this high breaks and we look for where is the nearest low, that was the last pullback. That's the end of the last pullback. So that becomes our low, right? So you think about it this way, all of these candles break the previous candle's high. It's all part of the up move. This candle fails to do so. So we start to get a pullback. The next candle breaks its low, right? So the pullback continues. This next candle fails to break its previous candle's low, right? So that now means we're having a bullish movement. This next candle breaks the candle's high, right? So that bullish movement continues. This candle fails to break this candle's high, right? So now what happens? It breaks its low, so we're moving to the downside, right? So then we have the movement to the downside. This next candle here, what does it do? It fails to break this previous candle's low, but it breaks its high. So now price means it's moving to the upside. So now you can see, right? If you look at just at the orange line and you concentrate your eyes, when we get the break of this high, and remember with fractal structure, when we want to find the new low, what do we take? We take the nearest low. And that's why this becomes the nearest low. Because as you can see, right? Moves to the upside, downside, upside, downside, upside. That becomes our new low. Okay, and I know that might seem a bit pedantic and a bit weird, but if you can get your mind around the mechanical rules, then that's literally how you can do it. And this is important to get it right, okay? So again, when we break that high, we want to find the nearest low. How do we do that? We look for the last candle, the nearest candle that failed to break its previous candle's high, because that essentially means that's where we've had the end of the last pullback before the high broke, and then all those candles break the previous candle's high, so that becomes our low. Okay, cool. And we got that rule down here. Okay, so a fractal high or low, it's only confirmed once price breaks the fractal high. And the reason why that's important is because you see when we're in the live market here, price starts to pull back, right? And then this candle fails to break this candle's low. So we now know we're getting an up movement. We can't map this as the fractal low yet. It's not a valid fractal low. Why? Because the fractal high or low is only confirmed once it breaks the fractal high, right? Because what could happen is price could come down again, right? Because we know we're trading between this range at this moment. So that's why when we get this initial up movement here, you can't mark this as your low because it's irrelevant. Remember what I said before? When price is trading between the active fractal high and the active fractal low, this can do whatever it wants in between, right? It's not valid. We don't pay attention to any of it until either the active fractal high or the active fractal low it's broken. Only once that's broken here, then we look back and we go, where was the nearest low? Okay, it's here because this was the nearest candle to fail to break its previous candle's high. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. So in a bearish market, we do the exact opposite in a bearish fractal structure market, okay? So remember, in a bullish market, when we're looking to define an up move, what do we look at? We look at the highs. Does each high continue to break, right? We ignore the lows. We don't care about the lows, right? We look at the highs. Yes, so that's all one up move. Well, we do the exact opposite with the bearish structure. We look at, do all of the previous candles break the previous candle's low? Yes, right? That breaks it, then we fail to get a break. So that's the down movement, right? Then we have the up movement, and then we break the low. When we break the low, obviously that was the last candle here that failed to break the previous candle's low because this candle, right, breaks that candle's low. Does this candle break the previous candle's low? No. So that becomes our new high, right? And as you can see it visually, right? It makes sense. We come up and then we come down. And then all of these candles break the previous candle's low, and then we don't, right? So that's all one down movement, and then we have the pullback, okay? So when we start to pull back, at this exact moment when this candle finishes closing, we can mark that out as our low, and this is our high. So we're trading between this high and low. We don't care about what any price wants to do within here. We almost ignore it, let's say, until either the high or low breaks. At this moment, the low breaks, so we have that bearish fractal continuation. And remember, where is our new high? It's going to be the nearest high because we want to be aggressive with fractal structure. So where is the nearest high? The nearest high is the last candle to fail to break the previous candle's low, right? Because we want to see where was that last fractal pullback, that last bullish pullback. This was the last candle to fail to break the previous candle's low, right? Because we can see, if we go from the break and just work your way backwards. So we get the break. Did this candle here break the previous candle's low? Yes, it broke this low. Okay, so we're moving on to the next candle. Did this candle break the previous candle's low? No, it failed to do so, right? So that was that last pullback. And then we have the down movement, right? So that's why this then would become our new fractal high, right? This one would no longer be it, and this would be the new fractal range we're within, okay? So how you can visually see this and why kind of the logic behind it is we have a down movement, we have an up movement. All of these candles break the previous candle's low, then it fails to do so, right? And then all of these candles break the previous candle's low, then it fails to do so. And then all of these candles move down. And that's why if you look at the orange lines, when we break this low, where is the nearest high? It's here, right? So that becomes our new fractal high. And that's essentially what we're doing. If you can get your head around this, you're well on your way to being able to map this. Okay, so CHoCH, change your character, what is it? And how are we looking at this? Well, it is very simply, basically everything that we just looked at, except we use the term change of character for when the fractal structure changes trend. Okay, so CHoCH, which is short for change of character, all that simply means is the fractal structure has changed trend. And we draw it on the line where that fractal structure changes trend. And that's it. I can't make it any more simple than that. That's as complicated as it needs to be, okay? So change of character, CHoCH, it's the fractal bullish structure changing to bearish structure, right? And vice versa. So all that means is fractal bullish structure shifting to bearish, i.e. the trend change, and then again, right? So what do we have here? All of these candles breaking the previous candle's high. Then this next candle fails to do so, so we pull back, right? Then we continue that move. We get that bullish fractal continuation. All of these candles break the previous candle's high. The next candle fails to do so, so we start to pull back. So now we can mark on our highs here, right? But we have our high and our low here. We wait for either the low or the high to break. The high breaks. At that moment, we want to find where is our nearest fractal low. Well, it's going to be the last candle that failed to break the previous candle's high. That would be this candle here, right? Because it failed to break this previous candle's high. So this is our low, right? So we have an up movement, then we pull back. So at this moment, we'd mark that out as our high, and this would be our low. Price then comes down and it takes the low. So this is when you have your bearish CHoCH, your bearish change of character. The fractal structure has now shifted from bullish to bearish. And that is what we're trying to do with fractal structure, is we're trying to identify these CHoCHs, okay? And that's it. That's if, I know we're going to get into later the reasoning behind why we use these frameworks, but this is the main reason we're going to be doing fractal structure in live market. We're not going to be marking on all of these continuations, right? We only care when we see that first little aggressive shift in structure, and that is going to help us with some trading decisions, okay? And this is essentially what we're looking at. CHoCH is what we care about. Now, there are going to be instances where price action is super choppy in a live market, and you're going to be getting bearish CHoCHs, bullish CHoCHs, bearish CHoCHs, and all that simply means is that price action is quite indecisive, right? And we're not going to really pay attention to it in those instances, as in it's not going to be very useful information, right? So it's all about knowing when and when not to pay attention to change of character, but we'll get into this at a later date. For now, we have to just practice identifying it and literally knowing how to label every single one. And then in the future, that's when you'll learn when to pay attention to it and when not to, all right? But for now, you need to know how to identify it first. That's basically what we're trying to do with these lessons, okay? So we get that bearish change of character. Next candle fails to break the previous candle's low, so we get that pullback. All of these candles break the previous candle's low. This candle fails to do so, so we get the pullback, right? And then all of these candles break the previous candle's low, so we continue to get that down movement. Then we get the pullback, right? You guys are getting used to this. And then we have a down movement, we have an up movement. But remember, we don't care really about any of this because why? Because at this moment, it's trading between the high and the low. So we almost ignore everything between the high and the low until either the high or low breaks. Once the low breaks, then we look back and we want to find, right, where is our nearest high? Get rid of these lines. Where is our nearest high when we break here? It's the last candle that failed to break the previous candle's low. Why? Because that's the last up movement and then the down movement. So that's our high, and obviously price then goes on to break it. So when we get the bearish fractal structure, which we've had since here, when that first shifts to bullish, which happens here, right? So it happens when we take this high, not this high, because some of you may think, right, you look at price action, you see that's kind of the pullback and that's the movement. Yes, but remember, CHoCH is aggressive. We want to be super, super aggressive with this, okay? And we want to find the nearest high, and that was it. So as soon as price trades up above this by 0.1 pips, right, the moment that happens in live price action, we have that CHoCH confirmed, and the fractal structure has shifted bullish. This then becomes our new low at this point, right? Let's make sure this makes it a little bit lower. All right, so this will be our new low. Actually, sorry, this would be our new low. I've done that slightly wrong. Okay, just going to adjust this here, and you'll see why in a minute. It's a bit more advanced. If I can see if I can get this to move. There we go. Okay. Because this candle, right, it was the last candle. So if we look back and we get that bullish change of character, and we look back, where was at this point the last candle to fail to break the previous candle's high? Well, did this candle here break the previous candle's high? Yes. So this is a part of the move. Did this candle here break the previous candle's high? Yes. So it's a part of the move. Did this candle here break the previous candle's high? No. Okay, so this is actually our nearest low, right? So it's a bit of a tricky example, and I even got caught out there, right? So this then would become our active fractal low, right? Then we get the pullback and we break up, right? And obviously then this becomes the last candle to fail to break the previous candle's high. So that becomes our new low there, okay? So cool. We'll go through tons of examples, but the main purpose of this little mini lesson here is that a change of character is simply the bullish structure shifting to bearish when we get that initial fractal trend change, and then vice versa. Okay, cool. Now we're just going to look at a few examples where I, typically find people can often get caught out on. Okay, so sort of, some common errors. So let's look at the first one. So we've obviously brought in the candle colors now, and this is where, it can kind of throw you around a little bit, okay? Because your brain can see the pullback. But remember, we have to, with fractal structure, we have to ignore the color of the candles and look at, did the candles break the previous candle's highs or lows, right? That's what we care about. So in this instance, let's concentrate on the first example. Start from the start, right? All of these candles break the previous candle's high, so that's all part of the up move. Now, in this instance, right, these two candles, both of the highs of the candles, they are the exact same price level. So this candle here and this candle here, they both trade exactly as high as each other. So is this a pullback or not? Regardless of the color of the candle, right? Is this a pullback or not? Well, remember, what is the definition of a fractal pullback? It's if it fails to break the previous candle's high. So if this candle here trades exactly as high as this candle here, then has it broken its high? No. Right? So that means the fractal pullback has started. So if you see perfectly equal highs, that is now the fractal pullback started, and you can mark this out as your current active fractal high, okay? So then what that means is as pricing continues to break this high, right? We have now had a continuation, a fractal continuation, and then that will become your low, right? And then eventually we get that change of character, right? So when you get exact equal highs, that is the fractal pullback because it's failed to continue the bullish movement, right? This is all bullish, then it's failed to do it, right? So that is your fractal pullback, okay? This one here is probably the most common one I see people get caught out on a lot on, and it's because of the way the candle looks, and I totally get it. It was a bit confusing for me. Took me a little while to get used to it, but this is where you have to really train your brain to, again, what? Look at, are the candles breaking the previous candle's high? Does this candle break the previous candle's high? Yes. So although it's a down movement, and although it breaks this low, remember, it doesn't matter. You need to be looking at the highs. All of these candles break the previous candle's highs. They continue to the upside, again, continue to the upside, then we get the pullback. So this is not a fractal low. So when price breaks this low, it's irrelevant, right? The way we view fractal structure, if we just had these candles, is that's all one up movement, and then that's just the pullback, and this would be a fractal high, okay? So again, don't get thrown around by the color of the candles, or if it breaks the lows here, right? Obviously, if the fractal low would be down here, like if we had this, right? As long as this low doesn't break the active fractal low at that point, then this is all one up movement, then we get the pullback, right? And then you'd be trading between this range, okay? And then the last one we're gonna look at is just, this is the perfect example of what we're looking for, right? All of these candles break the previous candle's high. This one fails to do so, so we pull back. Then all of these candles break the previous candle's high. So this is our CHoCH level, and then we get that change of character there, okay? Cool. And then last but not least, this is kind of one other example where I very frequently see, people understandably get a little bit caught out on, okay? So let's look at the first example, right? So all of these three candles break the previous candle's high, right? So we know that's part of the up move. Then this candle fails to break the previous candle's high. So now we get the fractal pullback. Okay, so then we can mark this out as our high, and then let's just say our low is down here, right? So we do nothing until either the high is broken or wherever our low is broken. Once the high breaks here, at that exact moment, we want to find what? We want to find the nearest fractal low. So what's the definition of the fractal low when we're bullish? We want to find where was the nearest candle that failed to break the previous candle's high. Well, did this candle here break the previous candle's high? Yes, it broke its high. Did this candle here break the previous candle's high? Yes, it did. So that shouldn't be the low, right? Now this candle here, did it fail to break the previous candle's high? Yes, it failed to break the previous candle's high, okay? So let's get rid of these lines. So this, right, based on that definition, this should be the nearest low because that is the nearest candle that failed to break the previous candle's high, right? So you'd be forgiven for thinking, right, well, we should draw our CHoCH line through here. Well, hopefully you can see why that doesn't really make sense because after that low was printed, what happened? Price traded lower and then we had the up movement, okay? So in these instances, when that happens, when you find the nearest candle that failed to break the previous candle's high, right? But then the next candle obviously trades lower, then this is where this becomes our low and that's our true CHoCH line, okay? So that's just an instance in which you need to adjust it to the next candle. So obviously it doesn't make sense to have a line where price has already traded through it, okay? Now, the reason why this candle is colored white is because it's an inside bar and we use an indicator, which I'll put in the links below to just color our inside bars a little bit different. An inside bar is very simply a candle that fails to break both the previous candle's high and low, right? So it trades inside the high and low of the previous candle, okay? That's all an inside bar is. And sometimes it can just help you to spot it in the market where price fails to do so, okay? So again, when you see that high break, you wanna look at where was the nearest candle that failed to break the previous candle's high. Okay, that failed to break the previous candle's high. So this becomes our low, our fractal low, but obviously price has already traded through it. So we just adjust it to the next candle and that becomes our candle in this case. Now, if we look at the second example, it's very, very similar, except it's just not an inside bar. So all of these candles break the previous candle's high, then we get that pullback, right? So then we know this is our high and this is our low. We wait for either the high or low to break. The high breaks over here. So then we want to find our nearest low. Did this candle break the previous candle's high? Yes, so that's part of the up move, right? Did this candle break the previous candle's high? Yes, okay, so that's part of the up move. Did this candle break the previous candle's high? No. Okay, so this should be our fractal low, right? But similarly, like the case before, price has already traded through it when the high goes, so we just adjust it to the next level, right? And we adjust it to here. And hopefully you can see the reasons why, right? If you look at price, it comes up, it comes down, essentially it comes up, then we get the down movement, and then we get the up movement, right? So if you look at this, if I move this away, you can see when the high goes here, where's our nearest low? It's here, right? Similarly to here, we have the up movement, we have the down movement, and then we have the up movement, okay? And that one's a bit simpler to see, but that's the reason why, okay? So that kind of wraps up, hopefully covering the sort of common errors that I see. I know there's probably quite a bit to get through there, a few little lessons, and it can seem a bit weird to kind of get your head around, and it can be quite wordy, but I promise with a bit of experience and practice, you'll be able to see this with second nature. And the beauty of this is 100% mechanical. The way we view fractal structure, obviously change your character, it is 100% mechanical. You can program this into an algorithm. I have tested this over a million different weird, every single price action example you could think of, and I have not yet found an example where it needed any form of discretion. It is 100% mechanical, okay? So in the next lesson, what we're gonna do is we're gonna go through price action, and we're gonna do a walkthrough, and we're just gonna practice this using bar replay and just practice mapping this and take it nice and slow. And then I'm gonna give you guys some homework to test it, and then you can compare it to mine just to really nail this in, okay?